Welcome to our channel, History of Everything. Today we speak about history of Mongolian. The Khoit-Senker cave in Khuvd province shows lively pink, brown, and red ochre paintings dated to 20,000 years ago, of mammoths, lynx, Bactrian camels, and ostriches, earning it the nickname, the Lascaux of Mongolia. The Venus figurines of Malta 21,000 years ago testify to the level of Upper Paleolithic art in northern Mongolia. Malta is now part of Russia. Neolithic agricultural settlements, c. 5500-3500 BC, such as those at Noravlan, Tamsagbalog, Bionzog, and Rashan Kad, predated the introduction of horse-riding nomadism, a pivotal event in the history of Mongolia which became the dominant culture. Horse-riding nomadism has been documented by archaeological evidence in Mongolia during the Copper and Bronze Age Afanasevo culture, 3500–2500 BC. This Indo-European culture was active to the Kongai Mountains in central Mongolia. The wheeled vehicles found in the burials of the Afanasevans have been dated to before 2200 BC. Pastoral nomadism and metalworking became more developed with the later Okunev culture, 2nd millennium BC, Andronovo culture, 2300–1000 BC, and Karasuk culture, 1500–300 BC, culminating with the Iron Age Xiongnu Empire in 209 BC. Monuments of the pre-Xiongnu Bronze Age include deer stones, Karagshor kurgans, square slab tombs, and rock paintings. Although cultivation of crops has continued since the Neolithic, agriculture has always remained small in scale compared to pastoral nomadism. Agriculture may have first been introduced from the west or arose independently in the region. The population during the Copper Age has been described as Mongoloid in the east of what is now Mongolia, and as Europoid in the west. Tocharians, Yuezhi, and Scythians inhabited western Mongolia during the Bronze Age. The mummy of a Scythian warrior, which is believed to be about 2,500 years old, was a 30 to 40-year-old man with blonde hair. It was found in the Altai, Mongolia. As equine nomadism was introduced into Mongolia, the political center of the Eurasian steppe also shifted to Mongolia, where it remained until the 18th century CE. The intrusions of northern pastoralists, e.g. the Guifang, Shanrong, and Donghu into China during the Shang dynasty, 1600–1046 BC, and Zhou dynasty 1046–56 BC, presaged the age of nomadic empires. Since prehistoric times, Mongolia has been inhabited by nomads who, from time to time, formed great confederations that rose to power and prominence. Common institutions were the office of the Khan, the Kurultai, Supreme Council, left and right wings, Imperial Army Keshig, and the decimal military system. The first of these empires, the Xiongnu of undetermined ethnicity, were brought together by Modu Shanyu to form a confederation in 209 BC. Soon they emerged as the greatest threat to the Qin dynasty, forcing the latter to construct the Great Wall of China. It was guarded by up to almost 300,000 soldiers during Marshal Meng Tian's tenure, as a means of defense against the destructive Xiongnu raids. The vast Xiongnu Empire, 209 BC 93 AD, was followed by the Mongolic Xianbei Empire, 93–34 AD, which also ruled more than the entirety of present-day Mongolia. The Mongolic Rouran Khaganate, 330–555, of Xianbei provenance was the first to use Khagan as an imperial title. It ruled a massive empire before being defeated by the Gokturks, 555–745, an even larger empire. The Gokturks laid siege to Panticapaeum, present-day Kerch, in 576. They were succeeded by the Uyghur Khaganate, 745–840, who were defeated by the Kyrgyz. The Mongolic Khitans, descendants of the Xianbei, ruled Mongolia during the Liao dynasty, 907–1125, after which the Kamag Mongol, 1125–1206, rose to prominence. Lines 3–5 of the Memorial inscription of Bilge Khagan, 684–737, in central Mongolia summarizes the time of the Khagans. In battles they subdued the nations of all four sides of the world and suppressed them. They made those who had heads bow their heads, and who had knees genuflect them. In the east up to the Kadirkan common people, in the west up to the Iron Gate they conquered. These Khagans were wise. These Khagans were great. Their servants were wise and great too. Officials were honest and direct with people. They ruled the nation this way. This way they held sway over them. When they died, ambassadors from Bokuli Chalug, Baki Korea, Tabgach, Tang China, Tibet, Tibetan Empire, Avar Khaganate, Rome, Byzantine Empire, Kyrgyz, Uch Kurikan, Oghuz Tatars, Khitans, Tatabis came to the funerals. So many people came to mourn over the great Khagans. They were famous Khagans. In the chaos of the late 12th century, a chieftain named Temujin finally succeeded in uniting the Mongol tribes between Manchuria and the Altai Mountains. In 1206, he took the title Genghis Khan, and waged a series of military campaigns, renowned for their brutality and ferocity, sweeping through much of Asia, and forming the Mongol Empire, the largest contiguous land empire in world history. Under his successors it stretched from present-day Poland in the west to Korea in the east, and from parts of Siberia in the north to the Gulf of Oman and Vietnam in the south, covering some 33 million square kilometers, 13 million square miles, 22% of Earth's total land area, and had a population of over 100 million people, about a quarter of Earth's total population at the time. The emergence of Pax Mongolica also significantly eased trade and commerce across Asia during its height. After Genghis Khan's death, the empire was subdivided into 4 kingdoms or khanates. These eventually became quasi-independent after the Tuluid Civil War, 1260-1264, which broke out in a battle for power following Möngke Khan's death in 1259. One of the khanates, the Great Khanate, consisting of the Mongol homeland and most of modern-day China, became known as the Yuan dynasty under Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. He set up his capital in present-day Beijing. After more than a century of power, the Yuan dynasty was overthrown by the Ming dynasty in 1368, and the Yuan court fled to the north, thus becoming the Northern Yuan dynasty. As the Ming armies pursued the Mongols into their homeland, they successfully sacked and destroyed the Mongol capital Karakoram and other cities. Some of these attacks were repelled by the Mongols under Ayushridar and his general Köke Timur. After the expulsion of the Yuan rulers from China proper, the Mongols continued to rule their homeland, known in historiography as the Northern Yuan dynasty. With the division of the Mongol tribes, it was subsequently also known as the 40 and the 4, Dasan Dorban among them. The next centuries were marked by violent power struggles among various factions, notably the Genghisids and the non-Genghizid Oirats, as well as by several Ming invasions, such as the 5 expeditions led by the Yongle Emperor. In the early 16th century, Dayan Khan and his Khatan Mandukai reunited all Mongol groups under the Genghisids. In the mid-16th century, Altan Khan of the Tumd, a grandson of Dayan Khan, but not a hereditary or legitimate Khan, became powerful. He founded Hohhot in 1557. After he met with the Dalai Lama in 1578, he ordered the introduction of Tibetan Buddhism to Mongolia. It was the second time this had occurred. Abtai Khan of the Khalkha converted to Buddhism and founded the Erden Zu monastery in 1585. His grandson Zanabazar became the first Jetsandamba Kututu in 1640. Following the leaders, the entire Mongolian population embraced Buddhism. Each family kept scriptures and Buddha statues on an altar at the north side of their yurt. Mongolian nobles donated land, money and herders to the monasteries. As was typical in states with established religions, the top religious institutions, the monasteries, wielded significant temporal power in addition to spiritual power. The last Khagan of Mongols was Ligdan Khan in the early 17th century. He came into conflicts with the Manchus over the looting of Chinese cities, and also alienated most Mongol tribes. He died in 1634. By 1636, most of the Inner Mongolian tribes had submitted to the Manchus, who founded the Qing dynasty. The Khalkha eventually submitted to Qing rule in 1691, thus bringing all of today's Mongolia under Manchu rule. After several Dzungar-Qing wars, the Dzungars, Western Mongols or Oirats, were virtually annihilated during the Qing conquest of Dzungaria in 1757 and 1758. Some scholars estimate that about 80% of the 600,000 or more Dzungar were killed by a combination of disease and warfare. Outer Mongolia was given relative autonomy, being administered by the hereditary Genghizid Khanates of Tushit Khan, Setsen Khan, Zasakht Khan and Sain Noyan Khan. The Jetsandamba Kutuktu of Mongolia had immense de facto authority. The Manchu forbade mass Chinese immigration into the area, which allowed the Mongols to keep their culture. The Oirats who migrated to the Volga steppes in Russia became known as Kalmyks. The main trade route during this period was the T road through Siberia. It had permanent stations located every 25 to 30 kilometers, 16 to 19 miles each, of which was staffed by 5 to 30 chosen families. Until 1911, the Qing dynasty maintained control of Mongolia with a series of alliances and intermarriages, as well as military and economic measures. Ambans, Manchu, high officials, were installed in Kari, Uliastai, and Kuvd, and the country was divided into numerous feudal and ecclesiastical fiefdoms, which also placed people in power with loyalty to the Qing. Over the course of the 19th century, the feudal lords attached more importance to representation and less importance to the responsibilities towards their subjects. The behavior of Mongolia's nobility, together with usurious practices by Chinese traders and the collection of imperial taxes in silver instead of animals, resulted in widespread poverty among the nomads. By 1911 there were 700 large and small monasteries in Outer Mongolia. Their 115,000 monks made up 21% of the population. Apart from the Jetsandamba Katuktu, there were 13 other reincarnating High Lamas, called seal-holding saints Tamgatai Katuktu, in Outer Mongolia. With the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1911, Mongolia under the Bogd Khan declared its independence. But the newly established Republic of China considered Mongolia to be part of its own territory. Yuan Shikai, the president of the Republic of China, considered the new republic to be the successor of the Qing. Bogd Khan said that both Mongolia and China had been administered by the Manchu during the Qing, and after the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1911, the contract of Mongolian submission to the Manchu had become invalid. The area controlled by the Bogd Khan was approximately that of the former Outer Mongolia during the Qing period. In 1919, after the October Revolution in Russia, Chinese troops led by warlord Xu Shuzheng occupied Mongolia. Warfare erupted on the northern border. As a result of the Russian Civil War, the White Russian Lieutenant General Baron Ungern led his troops into Mongolia in October 1920, defeating the Chinese forces in Nile Kuri, now Ulaanbaatar, in early February 1921 with Mongol support. To eliminate the threat posed by Ungern, Bolshevik Russia decided to support the establishment of a communist Mongolian government and army. This Mongolian army took the Mongolian part of Kyakhta from Chinese forces on the 18th of March 1921, and on the 6th of July, Russian and Mongolian troops arrived in Kuri. Mongolia declared its independence again on the 11th of July 1921. As a result, Mongolia was closely aligned with the Soviet Union over the next 7 decades. Mongolian People's Republic. In 1924, after the Bogd Khan died of laryngeal cancer or, as some sources claim, at the hands of Russian spies, the country's political system was changed. The Mongolian People's Republic was established. In 1928, Khorloogian Choibalsan rose to power. The early leaders of the Mongolian People's Republic, 1921-1952, included many with pan-Mongolist ideals. However, changing global politics and increased Soviet pressure led to the decline of pan-Mongol aspirations in the following period. Khorloogian Choibalsan instituted collectivization of livestock, began the destruction of the Buddhist monasteries, and carried out Stalinist purges, which resulted in the murders of numerous monks and other leaders. In Mongolia during the 1920s, approximately 1/3 of the male population were monks. By the beginning of the 20th century, about 750 monasteries were functioning in Mongolia. In 1930, the Soviet Union stopped Buryat migration to the Mongolian People's Republic to prevent Mongolian reunification. All leaders of Mongolia who did not fulfill Stalin's demands to perform Red Terror against Mongolians were executed, including Peljudayan Gendon and Anandan Amar. The Stalinist purges in Mongolia, which began in 1937, killed more than 30,000 people. Under Stalinist influence in the Mongolian People's Republic, an estimated 17,000 monks were killed, official figures show. Choibalsan, who led a dictatorship and organized Stalinist purges in Mongolia between 1937 and 1939, died suspiciously in the Soviet Union in 1952. Comintern leader Bohumir Smeril said, "People of Mongolia are not important, the land is important." Mongolian land is larger than England, France and Germany. After the Japanese invasion of neighboring Manchuria in 1931, Mongolia was threatened on this front. During the Soviet-Japanese border war of 1939, the Soviet Union successfully defended Mongolia against Japanese expansionism. Mongolia fought against Japan during the battles of Khalkhin Gol in 1939 and during the Soviet-Japanese War in August 1945 to liberate Inner Mongolia from Japan and Mengjong. Cold War. The February 1945 Yalta Conference provided for the Soviet Union's participation in the Pacific War. One of the Soviet conditions for its participation, put forward at Yalta, was that after the war Outer Mongolia would retain its independence. The referendum took place on the 20th of October 1945, with, according to official numbers, 100% of the electorate voting for independence. After the establishment of the People's Republic of China, both countries confirmed their mutual recognition on the 6th of October 1949. However, The Republic of China used its Security Council veto in 1955 to stop the admission of the Mongolian People's Republic to the United Nations on the grounds it recognized all of Mongolia, including Outer Mongolia, as part of China. This was the only time the Republic of China ever used its veto. Hence, and because of the repeated threats to veto by the ROC, Mongolia did not join the UN until 1961 when the Soviet Union agreed to lift its veto on the admission of Mauritania and any other newly independent African state in return for the admission of Mongolia. Faced with pressure from nearly all the other African countries, the ROC relented under protest. Mongolia and Mauritania were both admitted to the UN on the 27th of October 1961. On the 26th of January 1952, Umyao and Sedenbal took power in Mongolia after the death of Choibalsan. Sedenbal was the leading political figure in Mongolia for more than 30 years. While Sedenbal was visiting Moscow in August 1984, his severe illness prompted the parliament to announce his retirement and replace him with Jamban Batmonk. Post-Cold War. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 strongly influenced Mongolian politics and youth. Its people undertook the peaceful democratic revolution in January 1990 and the introduction of a multi-party system and a market economy. At the same time, the transformation of the former Marxist-Leninist Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party to the current Social Democratic Mongolian People's Party reshaped the country's political landscape. A new constitution was introduced in 1992, and the term, People's Republic, was dropped from the country's name. The transition to a market economy was often rocky. During the early 1990s, the country had to deal with high inflation and food shortages. The first election victories for non-communist parties came in 1993, presidential elections, and 1996 parliamentary elections. China has supported Mongolia's application for membership in the Asia Cooperation Dialogue, ACD, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, and granting it observer status in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Thank you for listening, friends. Keep support.